What's up, you guys? This is Adam Gillespie with Rancid and Sweaty Calves coming at you with yet another video. And I just wanted to cover this because, boy, oh boy, does this look like trash. So, Nerdrotic posted something on Twitter. This is a screenshot. This is not actually Twitter. But I wanted to cover this little imagery that's going on right here. You've got the how it started versus how it's going. And I want to show you guys how it started. This is a great piece of art right here. Look at this. You've got great proportionality, you've got a clear sense of understanding about how the body works, you've got some light gradient coloring. It's clearly the middle of the day. That's not even a really detailed background. It's just a blank white sheet behind all the buildings and whatnot. But it's still dynamic and interesting, and you've got this great contrast between She-Hulk, and the people behind her. She's clearly imposing and clearly interesting. Amazing. I love this art. This is great Stan Lee, Steve Ditko style art from the early years of Marvel Comics. Now, if we move on to what's going on now, we've got this absolutely trash version of She-Hulk that looks like someone took Kelly from The Office and painted her green. I mean, maybe a little worse. There's zero proportionality. The arms are shorter than they should be. She's leaning forward, but the collarbones in and of themselves look like they start at the actual bicep of the arm. The thumbs are disproportionately long. The eyes are massive, wide, and completely incongruent to each other. The eyebrows are way too close to the bridge of the nose, and not only that, but they're also basically another whole eye above the eyes. You've got zero deep shadow on the entirety of the figure except for up by the top where her hairline starts. And even though she's leaning forward, you get zero context as to what is supposed to be emphasized from her leaning forward. There's a thing called forced perspective that helps us to understand to the extent that a person's leaning forward, and this doesn't do anything. This looks like a really short, maybe 5'3", 5'4" woman who's just barely able to lean over the desk. Again, contrast that with how this looks over here, where she's standing twice as tall while hunched over compared to a normal girl. It's really weird that you would have this and say it's the same thing. Not to mention the background is really annoying because there's zero continuity between the angles that buildings are put at. There's no perspective. It's just, oh hey, we threw some rectangles back there, and then we threw some rectangles on those rectangles to make them look like they're more rectangular buildings. There's zero effort in this stupid garbage. There's like zero effort to make this more interesting. Again, you don't even have to do that much, but look at this. This has a clear understanding of perspective. It is a one-point perspective, where every line that is not going towards the dot in the middle of the page is a flat line, because we're looking at it from a flat angle. And then every line that is going towards the middle of the page probably has a single point on it that would indicate where that building is going. And look at that. Look at the congruency. Look at the consistency of every single building in this picture compared to this over here. And these are minor gripes, by the way. These are things that you can fix through a couple of simple artistic practices. And I'm no expert, I'm no comic book artist myself, although I do try to make my own stuff look great. I'm not going to say I am great. I do try my best, though. I actually have some examples here. Here's a photo I took off of a picture that I'm working on. This is nowhere near as good as it could be, and I'm probably going to redo the inking and the deep shadow, but let's take a look at the face and the proportions of the body, okay? The face here, she's got a nice wide smile, she's got decently proportioned lips and eyes, even though her eyes are a little wonky. That's mostly because I drew this a while ago and I just started to get to it, and I should probably fix that. But look at the way that I was able to put the hair behind the ears. That's something that really they should have done on the other She-Hulk image. There's some clear curls, you've got deep shadow in the hair, but not just the hair, you've got deep shadow under the chin, which you can see just barely there. You've got deep shadow in the shirt all throughout the jacket. Clearly there's deep shadow. And I'm definitely going to redo that deep shadow because I don't like it. And you've got some contrast in the way the skin tones work. You've got this deeper, darker skin tone. You've got some reflective lighting on the left portion of her face. You've got highlights that are highlighting the edge lighting of her figure, highlighting the edges of her skin, so you're getting a little extra contrast there. It's really simple stuff. I haven't even drawn a background for this yet, and it's just so much simpler. And I'm not going to say that I'm just that much better than the modern day comic book artist, because I don't think I am. I just think that they didn't put any effort into this and called it a day, and they really, really hamstringed themselves. Now if we come over to here, this is something I did not for any other purpose than to draw it for my friend. She had a draw this in your style art competition, and I decided to go ahead and go in. So I decided I would draw this in my style. Even though it's not the exact pose she had in mind, I decided to draw it like this because I thought it would be way more interesting to draw something completely different than just copying like most people do. Nevertheless, let's take a look at the edge lighting, the base coloring, the gradient coloring, and the deep shadow regarding this picture. Again, this is something I did for a friend because I wanted to do something for a friend. Not necessarily to be in a comic, but just for a friend. This took like a day, just a day, to do the coloring and inking. So we look at the edge light of this character. Her name is Rose. You've got this edge lighting, and you've got this deeper skin tone to contrast the edge light from the skin, and then you've got the base skin tone. There may be some slight gradient coloring regarding the character's skin tone, and there's definitely slight gradient coloring down here by the right leg, the outer thigh. You've got the edge lighting, you've got some highlights that go along the seam of the pant, and then you have some base color, and you have a gradient color, and that leads into the deep shadow. And you've got that edge lighting all throughout this character because she is the one who's directly in contact with the light source coming from behind her, being her golden wings. I even took the time and effort to draw a little bit of a light source affecting her eyes, because I thought that that would be more interesting than just giving her plain, boring eyes. I also made her eyes feminine, had a point on the end of them, so that it looked like she had some eyelashes. Her eyebrows are thin, but still noticeable. You can get a clear understanding of how her face looks, and there's barely any shading on it because I wanted to contrast it to the highly lit up areas of the edging of her body. The same goes for her hair. Even though I don't have every strand looking absolutely perfect and magnificent, you can still clearly tell that it's hair that has deep shadow and edge lighting, and it's being affected by the deep shadow and edge lighting. You've even got deep shadow under her chin, which is how it's typically been done in comic books. You can actually see that on the She-Hulk poster if you go back and pause it. There's actually some deep shadow under her chin to indicate shadow there a little more than the rest of the comic, than the rest of the cover where it's just gradient shading. And you come over to here, my character in Vince Ladd, who I drew flying with Rose, has a much simpler shading process, but you can see a clear contrast between the base color of the skin tone and the deeper shadowy parts of the skin tone. And even then, I drew some black ink marks. I drew some black ink. I put in some black ink for the purpose of showing deep shadow in the points where the light really didn't touch. And then there's edge lighting. There's edge lighting along his face to indicate that there is a bright light source shining down on him. You've even got some edge lighting on the costume. You've got edge lighting on the costume running down the arms and running down the areas of the suit that would be affected by the light coming from her. You've got edge lighting coming down the hip and down the left thigh, down to the left knee and down to the left calf, down to the left foot. And then you've got some edge lighting that's a little bit less intense, that is showing that there's another light source somewhere outside of the light source that's shining down upon him directly right next to him. You've got some highlights on the suit, which are like high bright whites. You've got some gradient blue. You've got some texturing that leads into the dark ink. You've got some more highlights. You can actually see the gradient color here between the middle muscle of the thigh and the far right muscle of the left thigh. There's some darker shadow. You can see the gradient a little clearer here on one of the quadriceps. You can see there's some contrast between how the deep shadow works. These basic sketch marks, the deeper parts of the black coloring, and the base color blue with a little bit of gradient brightness. It's not that complicated. It's not that difficult to do this. People just don't do it, and it really gets annoying. You've even got some basic coloring contrast between the darker shaded parts of the hair and some basic coloring contrast between the highlighted parts of the hair. And even on this character of Invincilad, I drew in a light source affecting his eyes. And again, this is not the greatest art in the world. It's better than the She-Hulk garbage, but it's not the greatest. I took a day to do this, and I kind of did a rush job because I wanted to get it to my friend as quickly as I could. But you're going to tell me that a comic book company would rather hire the She-Hulk artist than somebody who could do something basic like this and say, yeah, we'll go with the She-Hulk artist because it looks like absolute dog water. This is humiliating for Marvel. This is humiliating. When someone like me, who is not getting paid and takes a day to do this and adds all this effort into this, who isn't even a part of a major company and isn't getting paid for anything, can do this, which may be only slightly better in some people's eyes. I don't have any ability to judge it myself because I'm not necessarily the greatest when it comes to judging my own art. I typically be a little harsher, but in comparison to something like the She-Hulk comic, I can say definitively this is better. This is better. And I didn't even do this for any purpose other than to help a friend and to show that I support her art style, I support her art journey. It's sad. It's sad. That comic book artist probably got paid a really decent chunk of change that I would gladly take in a moment. But these comic book artists and comic book companies don't care about quality anymore. They care about pushing an agenda. They care about making sure that people look at absolutely dog water art and say, oh, the professionals are so good. They have to be really, really good at their job to get a job. That means that this is a really amazing piece of artwork here on the She-Hulk cover. No. Don't let them gaslight you. That's not good artwork. That's pretty bad. It's disproportionate. She's clearly missing body parts in the form of her ears. Her irises are disproportionate. There's no deep shadow except for on the hairline, which makes zero sense. You've got a light source coming from the back, which doesn't really affect the overall coloring of the image. So it just makes everything more bland and boring. You need to do something a little bit more, interesting. Jorge Jimenez is a great artist that I would highly recommend looking at for contrast coloring. Seriously, the guy's incredible. Just go look at him, and you'll have pretty much all the information you need. Because he's got like 3 layers of coloring. He's got the base color, he's got a highlight color, and he's got a deeper shadow color that mixes in with the deep shadow of the inking to highlight muscles and stuff like that. She-Hulk, man, they really hate a good character, don't they? And it's just gotten worse. And the character design has just been proven to make things worse. And this, again, this right here, this imagery, the one that I did for a friend, I didn't get paid for it. I just did it because I appreciate my friend. I wanted to help my friend. I wanted to be nice to my friend. Marvel comic books, they're trash now. Anyways, that's going to do it for this video. If you guys enjoyed it, please make sure to leave a like, comment down below your thoughts, share this video out there with your friends, subscribe and hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss a single video that I upload, and check me out on all my different socials, including my Rumble. I leave links to those in the description below. I hope you guys have a great day and a great rest of the week.